Welcome to the weekly Secure Threat Insights group discussion. We've got a lot of accomplishments to highlight over the last week, so feel free to click through any of those links in the agenda. And our first agenda item is from our guest attendee, James Johnson, who's going to introduce himself and then tell us what he put in the agenda.
All right, so I guess first off, I will introduce myself. So I'm on the vulnerability research team. So I'm adding a link to our page in the handbook. I'm basically going to just summarize that. So the vulnerability research team is, our main goal is to perform research and develop proofs of concepts to improve our analyzers and how we detect and deal with vulnerabilities. So it's not so much contributing directly to the product or maintaining features long-term. It's more about the research. We also do a few other things. We maintain Gymnasium DB, and we run the CNA program, so we can issue CVE IDs. Yeah, and I linked to the page in the handbook if you wanted to read up a little more on it. But yeah, it's a pretty small team. It's myself, Julian Tome, and Isaac Dawson, and Mark Art is our manager. So yeah, is that about what you were looking for, Lindsay? Awesome, very cool. So I'm also, my agenda item specifically is about this individual contributor gearing working group. There was a very large merge request a few weeks ago, I think it was open maybe a month ago, about having gearing ratios for the staff plus roles. So for staff and everything above. And it brought up a lot of interesting concerns, things to talk about, and the merge request ended up being closed. The discussion was too big to handle and to really have effectively. And so Eric wanted to try a functional leads approach where a working group works with a smaller set of representatives from different organizations. And so I'm representing the Defend and Secure departments, and I have an Epic that is keeping track of my notes of every meeting and any ongoing feedback and discussions that people have. So it does kind of impact most people. If you wanted to go down the individual contributor route, so it's very interesting keeping track of the discussions. There's actually five different proposals we're looking at right now. And one of the proposals is we do nothing and we leave things how they are. So yeah, my agenda item is mostly bringing this to your attention. I meant to do this last week, but I did not make that happen. So here I am today.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
No, there's a lot to read. So and there's a good discussion with Lucas already. So I got some stuff to catch up on. Thanks for doing that.
And this is half the team, which is great, or at least representative of half the team since there's two groups. Tiago or Lindsay, can you let the container security group know about this as well? You got it, Tiago? Cool.
Was this the wrong meeting? I was trying
to
catch.
No, this is a good one.
Oh, this is a good one. Okay.
This is one of the good ones.
All right, awesome.
Basically, there's two groups. There's Threat Insights, which is this group, of which about half the people come because half are in APAC, half are in EMEA, and then some in North America. And then there's a container security group too, which is also smaller.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, so if anybody does have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly too, or comment in the issue. Lucas Charles had some concerns about not being involved in the broader discussion. And so that is a secondary scope of the working group, is to try to figure out a better way to scale very large discussions. And so I actually started, so Lucas and I made a separate proposal specifically about that, about splitting things off by topic and using automation to try to make it scale. But that's like very proof of concept-y in the works. and we'll be talking about that in the next meeting for the working group. But yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Is that the topic behind you, James? If you just move your head to the side a little bit, is that the?
You'll
yes,
zoom
that
in.
that is exactly what that is. I was trying to figure out how it would work, how to automate scaling discussions and splitting them by topic. Yeah.
Super cool project.
Okay, anyone else have any discussions that they want to bring up before we move down to demos and planning breakdown? Okay, Alexander didn't want to note anything, but I wanted to note something because I was just looking on the dashboards in production when I was participating in some really interesting user interviewing earlier and noticed some stuff that was live on the dashboard that wasn't the last time I looked. So you can now sort by detected date, description, and we already had the severity out there. So I wanted to call that out, and I can share, you can all just link. And then the activity column is live. So Neil, just a special highlight for you. I know you guys had some dependencies on that activity column rolling out.
That's fantastic. I was writing a comment about that.
Yay.
Another issue right now. Good news. Congratulations, everyone.
Great work.
That is really cool.
And we've got a few items for planning breakdown. One is a continuation of last week's discussion around an issue that Alexander created as a product improvement around our filters, which I think Alexander might be a little bit scarred from talking about it because he's been working on this for a while now. So Alexander, do you want to just, for the sake of getting everyone on the same page, just do a quick summary of what this issue is requesting or proposing?
Yeah, definitely. So basically in working on the vendor scanner filter issue, one thing that came up is it made things simpler by disabling filters that would not produce any results. And we were able to do that for the scanner filter because we had part of the changes were that we needed to make a GraphQL query up front to sort of dynamically generate those. So we were able to tell which scanners were going to produce results or not, which allowed for us to disable them. This was a proposal to mirror that feature across all the existing scanners and ones going forward. This would require additional calls to sort of dynamically figure out which ones should be disabled or not up front. And this also brought up a lot of discussion about the complexity of this, but also, what was in scope. So
was it going to be about this? Maybe it's actually more of a question to Matt, but so, and maybe Andy too. So let's say a certain filter would produce no vulnerabilities. I can understand why we wouldn't want to show it because it doesn't do anything. But just if it disappears, they may not realize there is that field there and there's a filterability on it. Is the benefit of, have we looked at the benefits of it hiding it if it wouldn't do anything versus not, and with the benefit of seeing it there, it not doing anything, but knowing that it's possible to do that, I guess. And we looked at the pros and cons between those two. And I definitely trust the team's judgment. I just want to ask the question.
Yeah, so the Alexander's original proposal, I think we just kind of gray out, or it would be in a disabled UI state, but not hidden. Because hiding, let's say, SAST one day doesn't produce anything, so we remove the SAST filter. You're like, hey, I use that all the time. What the heck? Why isn't it here? Whereas graying it out would just allow the user to not be ending in an odd path of no results. So it's still going to be there, and also help generate that awareness that there are more scanners available. Because
so we're not hiding, we're disabling.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably the best of both worlds. Okay.
Could we instead not disable it but just show the counts instead? Because I see a situation where somebody might want to bookmark a specific set of filters that they can click on it and see if any pop up. And if it's disabled, then they won't be able to do that bookmark.
that sounds very cool to me, and was something we had talked about. I do see an issue, and actually this is a similar issue with disabling them. Is say there's some detected, but they're all of severity, I don't know, high, and then someone else filters on critical, and then they go over and they still see detected, but say they're, all the critical ones are, confirmed or something. The problem with that I see with disabling is people are going to click that. You can still get to a state where there's nothing's going to show, and it's through a combination, and making that dynamic makes things even more complicated. And it's the same issue with the counters, is you're going to see like, oh, there's 8 detected, but they're all high. So when you filter on critical, you're still going to see detected, and there's still going to be 8 there. And you're going to click on that, and you're going to see 8, and you'll be like, why? I don't know. And that those are both complex scenarios, but would be possible sort of with either of these solutions. Yeah, so I feel like with counters, it would definitely have to be dynamic based on what you select. Otherwise, the user is going to get confused. And I think with disabling them, maybe that still needs to be the dynamic, so users don't get confused.
I guess I don't want to derail the conversation to the direction we're heading. I'm wondering if we're trying to get too fancy with something that's maybe, I'm worried that the effort is going to be really big, and the payoff is going to be that somebody clicks a filter and it's like, whoops, the filter didn't produce any results. And they're like, huh. And then they just take the filter off. I think as long as we can clearly distinguish for the user, you got to this view, and it's the view that has no vulnerabilities, as opposed to this particular project has no vulnerability results right now. Like there's 0, even if you had all the filters off.
Well, ultimately, it's Matt's call whether this is something we pursue, and we are at that planning breakdown portion of our questions where we're really just asking if we understand the requirements. So if understanding the requirements leads us to, or Matt to decide that this is something that may not have enough reward based on the effort, maybe we should move on. No offense to Alexander, because I do want to encourage people to propose product improvements. Like I think it's really great that you created this and that we've had this good discussion around it.
Yeah, thank you. I have no qualms about this going nowhere. I just brought it up for as a suggestion. So if it does sound very complex, and if it isn't worth it, then that's fine. But
I'm really glad you brought it up, because it spawned the good discussion around it. So is there a decision on this, Matt? Should we do it or not based on this discussion, or not deciding yet?
I mean, I don't want to decide just yet on it. I think if we realize that this is going to be a very big effort, then I'm likely to defer it until later. I think this is a really nice optimization. I'm curious, are there other like examples that we could potentially pull from? Like this feels like a pattern that somebody would have tripped across this before. Like maybe there's another way we could address this that kind of gets at the same intent that might be a little easier to implement or something.
I do not know. I have not done.
I have no idea either.
Deep filtering and labels, and not labels, but deep filtering and tables are not like deep competency we have here, because it's something we don't really manage and deal with that much in the product. So there isn't like a lot of existing pattern. I mean, even the table pattern itself is like column, list, item. It's very rudimentary. So we'd have to be building these things out.
So I don't want to leave this on a Matt, you mentioned wanting to know the effort before determining if it's something that we're moving forward with, because we're ahead of refinement right now. So do you want us to go through and put in a level of effort or put some refinement towards this? And if so, I think we would look to you and Andy to clarify some of these requirement questions around it. I just want to know what we should do with this issue and be able to move forward.
Also, before you answer, I just want to say one thing, which is you talked about, maybe the complexity isn't worth the effort. And I think that probably extends to the work that you and Andy would have to do as well regarding like the complexity in the work to like figure out edge cases or think about edge cases, or even like thinking about this to create requirements. And so if you don't think it's worth thinking about, that's also fine.
I feel like I'm going to hurt your feelings, my answer on this one. I think that this is a very good improvement. I think it's early. So that sounds like it would make sense to defer this into the backlog, and we can look at this for a future planning breakdown. I'm also a little worried because we are going to be adding additional filters and potentially redoing some of these. I would hate to put a lot of good work into it now, only to have that sort of blow up in a few releases.
Makes sense. Cool, let's dump it.
Not
And
dumping it. Just
James
moving
added a
it.
question, and I don't want to answer it incorrectly. The split scanner options in the dropdown, that's the work that Alexander, I think that Led did this idea. So Alexander's been working on adding the vendors to the scanner dropdown. I think that's what you're referring to, James?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was part of this issue or it's more, dev environment with a few things going on. I was just curious.
So Alexander, I mean, this isn't part of it. This was an idea that came up during the development of it. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and I can give you a link, James, in the document later.
Sweet, thank you.
Okay. Tiago, before we move on, did you want to verbalize your question?
Yeah, just a meta discussion on, so this issue, if it goes to the backlog, do we keep the planning breakdown label on it, or do we move it back to design?
100% put it back in design. Sorry, Andy.
But assume the design was complete and we legitimately only needed the planning breakdown. I guess we keep it on the stage that it needs, right? We just consider the milestone where it's planned for, whether or not to bring to this meeting. Yeah, that sounds obvious now that I say it. Thank you.
Yeah, this one honestly could probably go back to start, because I think Alexander brought up a great point. There's going to be a lot of edge cases. I think we need to do additional sort of design thinking work around this one. So it probably needs a redo or a reset.
Whew. All right. I'm going to move on to item B now, unless if anyone else has anything to add.
Kitty.
Should hope. Oh yeah, they're really distracting this afternoon. This is my third call where there was like a squirrel outside earlier, and they were really like going for it. Sorry.
They're growing.
They're really getting huge. They're still so cute. Okay, so we're gonna remove a feature flag. I might have another very similar issue to create around a feature flag that someone has around dismissals, but I'm still looking into that one. So this was created to get rid of any of the code around the introduction of the instance level security dashboard. It's a pretty straightforward issue. I hope we've all looked at it. Just a reminder of what our planning breakdown questions are. Are the requirements clear enough?
I believe so.
Cool. Do we know the dependencies?
I believe so.
I don't think there's any questions around research or solution validation. This just needs to be done. And the final, well, not final question, I think we've tacked on a few other questions that Tiago and I would like to get information about at this point. Is this small enough to complete in one iteration? Okay, so it sounds like it's past our standard planning breakdown questions, sub-questions now. Is there any end-to-end test considerations involved in the removal of this code? I don't think so. And documentation, we've been missing putting documentation labels on things. It puts us in a bind at the end. I don't think that the removal of this feature flag would require any documentation updates.
It will not.
All right. So the answer to this question is yes across the board. We will move this into refinements. Thank you, everyone. Oh, that was so easy. And this one's not going to be as easy, and I'm very glad that James is here too. Tiago, I'll let you talk about this because you created the sort of wrapper POC.
I did. So because there are no backend people who actually, well, apart from you, James, who actually understand what they're talking about, it might be a bit of a meta discussion. But I've structured in the epic what I think is a good approach to breaking down and tackling it, and also what the outcome should be. So if I share my screen so we can all look at what I'm looking at.
And I hope everyone's had a chance to watch the brown bag demo to see the POC that James has created around this. James, I don't know if I've told you this, I love the time traveler example that you used in there. That was awesome.
It was really fun.
They were great examples. It was a fun brown bag. So what that produces for us, just to take a couple steps back and why this is interesting, is to integrate an analyzer. You need to change 3 spots. You need to, aside from writing the analyzer itself, you need the schema that will that'll describe what the analyzer has produced. Then you need to change that's the JSON schema. Then you need to change the database schema in preparation for ingesting that report that has been produced. And then as a final step, probably the most important, is being able to show that to the user in a easy to digest and easy to work way on the front end. And these are 3 separate sort of groups of people. Not so much on the vulnerability management database model and front end, because we're all in threat insights, but the schema is a separate one. So James has done a proof of concept. The work is there, it's available, it works. What the ask to threat insights now is that we're gonna own this. It's gonna be ours to keep, but also maintain. And because we're gonna be maintaining it, we want to review it and make sure there are no maintainability issues or any room for improvement. And the general approach that I described there is that our engineers backend and front end review the MRs that have been produced and then propose whatever needs to be done with it. If there are minor changes on the existing merge requests, that's great. It's probably the smallest, easiest, probably the most, I don't know, the most straightforward way of doing it, but I think it's unlikely. What we might want to do on the opposite end of that is take those changes and break them apart into smaller slices of functionality, or even by expertise, front end, back end, and the report schema. So with that, the floor is open.
You already kind of addressed my question, the top question that I added to the agenda, Tiago, which was around how much of this is us integrating the POC that James created versus writing new code. And I like the way you described that. My second question is, I felt like James's POC contained kind of 2 big topics, and I might be kind of crazy, but the way I viewed it was there's the fingerprinting aspect, which helps us identify, has a vulnerability been seen or not, is it reintroduced, and then there's this dynamic display of the details. And to me, that was sort of a natural division. And I'm open to other ways that maybe we could break that up. James, I don't know from your perspective, how much of does that make sense? Would it be practical?
That's exactly how I see it. So there's if you wanted a totally generic security report as like an end goal, you need the dynamic display with the details field or whatever field it ends up being put in, right? And then you need a generic way to track vulnerabilities as the project changes. So those 2 are, to me, distinct requirements to be able to have the generic security report. And yeah, I would totally do them separately. They are completely separate. Yeah.
So Tiago, this issue that we're looking at, I think still kind of encapsulates the whole POC. Is that right?
No, in my mind, this only didn't address the location tracking.
Okay,
But
cool.
that's the room for improvement there. Yeah.
Awesome. One final question for me is that I know one of the dependent scanners that's looking to leverage this display is the fuzz testing results. And I think they've been somewhat blocked on enhancing the vulnerability detail page to accommodate for some of the very different results that they show there. So, I know Neil's on this call, and, I'm hopeful that there might be a way that we can leverage some of the front-end engineers on his team to help us move this needle faster in order to unblock the fuzz testing team. So I guess it's not as much of a question as just a statement. And I will be quiet now.
I'll actually comment on that as well, Lindsay. Yesterday I met with some people who do like secret squirrel work for the Australian government, and they are sort of a niche because it's air-gapped environment and they can't talk too much about what they're doing. But what they did ask me is whether we can do custom analyzers. And I say, oh, this is coming up and we're talking about that right now. So it's a sample of one, Matt, but I feel like people will be interested in writing their own analyzers, be it the time traveling example that James did or their own secret squirrel. I can't know what it is or they'll have to kill me. Kind of thing.
You get all the cool animals in Australia.
I know. It's all very dangerous in here, the humans and the nature. So I think what I wanted to have out of this is I have a volunteer in the backend to read through the MRs. I think I haven't seen Mehmet's report or feedback, but he's the one reviewing it. And we probably need someone on the front end side for this. Don't everyone volunteer once?
You could just ask somebody. And Savash is out this week, so unfortunately, and it could wait. And there's, like I said, there's also the possibility of getting some eyes from folks on Neil's team as well, who have a lot of domain knowledge in this area.
Yeah, definitely. And we have upcoming projects that are, I don't want to say being held back necessarily, but there's a lot of considerations in terms of where does this data go without making it overly complex. And it's work that's possibly planned for 13.6 even. So I don't know how fast we're going to move here, but yeah, definitely want to be involved.
So maybe we can have one person from the Threat Insights group, I'm looking at Daniel or Alexander, volunteer, and also somebody from Neil's team to take a look at the front end plan here. Does that seem okay?
And then we keep this on planning breakdown until we have those answers. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it. I can take a look. And then I will, do you know what Mehmet's report, like, is he going to, like, I guess, put comments in this issue then?
That's what I suggested. Put some comments with his approach, sort of a high level plan to how to tackle it.
Cool.
We can use the Epic for that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do the same then.
Hope I'm capturing this. We will leave this in planning breakdown. Okay.
And we're at time. There's this great AMA that I want to take.
Thank you, everyone. I will post the recording of this shortly. Take care.
Bye, friends.
See you guys.
Yeah.